Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this first in our series of Finding Hope in our history, a series of events celebrating music and the history of our congregation within our broader community, the town of Hopkinton. Welcome to this afternoon of music and remembrance that will benefit not only our spirits, excuse me, but also the restoration of our historic organ and our sanctuary this coming summer. This afternoon launches the series themed around the intersection between music history and finding hope for our future. Many are contributing and have contributed to this effort being led by the organ fundraising committee of our Music and Arts Board. You'll hear more about that from Sarah Ames, our music director. You'll be hearing from Sarah Ames, our music director, for an overview of our campaign, as well as from our current and former organists for some lively conversation about the organ instrument. Following this, we will enjoy a program of music presented by Missy and Dan Dustin. And as we move through this program, we continue to be grateful for this time to further reflect and pause, to breathe in, to breathe out, to think about how we are connected to our appreciation of music in our spirituality, in our faith, in our ancestry, of how our history is intertwined with our town, and how we are intertwined and connected to one another and to the Spirit. Thank you for joining us. Now, without further ado, here's Sarah Ames.
Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. I just wanted to orient you a little bit, as this is the official kickoff of our restoration campaign for this huge, beautiful instrument. So if you take a look through the program, the little booklet that you were given or might have received in the mail recently, you'll see there's some wonderful history about the church, history about the organ, and then it talks about the needed repairs. You'll hear more details about that from the experts themselves, because frankly, I can't pronounce all of those words. Have no idea what they mean. But as you can see, the total cost of repair for this organ is going to be around $20,000 to $25,000. The organ restoration is estimated to be completed during summer of 2025, and we hope to have a lively concert featuring the organ in the fall of next year to celebrate the end of our campaign. Over the next year, the events, the Finding Hope in Our History series, and some other opportunities will feature stories from our collective past, church, and wider community. We're putting a spotlight on the talented musicians and artists in our church. And then through hands-on experiences, we're engaging the curious children and youth among us. And I didn't bring one up, that they're in the back, but we have this wonderful story about a spider named Gloria who lives in the organ. If you want to take a read about how Gloria came to live here at First Church, there's a story in the back, and you can take home a little pipe and fill it with pennies and more and bring back to help Gloria restore her home and our beautiful instrument. All right, and so there in the book as well are ways to donate. You'll also see larger versions of those types in the back, and as well as across the parking lot afterwards. All right. Without further ado, next is Steve Thomas and David Almond with a wonderful presentation about history and what needs to be fixed.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to talk about the history of this organ, of this instrument, and I'm going to try to use no technical terms. All right? And to start, I'm going to ask you, if you can't remember when you were a kid, taking a empty Coke bottle and putting it up to your lips and having your lips just right and blowing into the bottle and getting a wonderful sound. Maybe you couldn't do it at first and you were so disappointed because all the older kids around you could do it. But finally you got the touch, you knew just how to put your lip on it, and you gave a big blow and you made a wonderful big sound. That is the essence of a pipe organ. Wind goes through a pipe. Everything else is extra, and it helps to bring the wind to the pipe. And I hope that you will remember that as we go along here. The instrument was bought in 1872, and I think something that I wrote for the newsletter some while ago is in the front page of the booklet. And of course, there was no electricity at the time. You can hear the blower going now. If you listen, you hear it? That's providing wind for the organ. And that's all the organ needs, essentially. And in 1872, without electricity, it had to be hand pumped. And if you look along this side of the organ toward the back, you see a long slit. See that? See that long slit? Well, the handle for the bellows, if you will, stuck out from there, and it had to be pumped whenever the organist was going to play. Up and down, up and down. And I have had friends here, long departed, who said they could remember a man sitting behind the curtain. It was just like Wizard of Oz. And I'm going to send around a couple of pictures so that you can see what it looked like. And the man behind the curtain was often a local farmer who belonged to the church. And when he came in the morning, if he was the first man, Reverend, I knew this would happen. Reverend Kimball, Lucian Kimball, said, "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so. Would you blow the organ for us this morning?" And he, of course, would say, "Well, certainly." And he'd come up and position himself behind the curtain. Now, in spite of the fact that parents said to their kids, "Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain," of course they did, because it was much more fun to watch this guy pumping the thing. Often, he'd been up since 4 o'clock milking the cows. And what do you suppose happened to him behind that curtain where it was so quiet? Rose Putney Hanson's father Ira often pumped it, and he would fall asleep back there. And then the minister would have to say, "Hymn number 418. And he'd snap to, of course. So it was all without the kind of electricity that we have today. I'm not going to go through what Sarah put in as the introduction, but I will say, that I was first in this church in December 1959. I was a senior at Concord High School, and I was a member of a bell choir at First Congregational Church in Concord. I was also a member of the Pilgrim Fellowship and pastor's class, the whole thing. And we came out here to play the bells because our organist was directing Johann Christoph Bach's The Childhood of Jesus. It was the Hopkinton Choir was all assembled over there, and Rachel Johnson played this organ. I remember that so well. I thought it was kind of a dingy little old church. It hadn't been redecorated since, say, 1906. It was musty, and I was glad I didn't belong to this church. But anyway, the oratorio came off, and we played our bells over here, and gave everybody a good concert of Christmas carols, and then we left. It was over. And I wasn't in the church again until the late 60s. I'm trying to cut this down a bit. Sue and I, my wife and I, had rented a house in Hopkinton, and Steve Garvey one afternoon came to see her. I was teaching at the time, and he said, "Why don't you come to church? You say you've sung in choirs?" "Yes, Steve has too." "Well, why don't you come to church and sing with the choir?" So I said, "Well, okay, I'll give it a try." And so we showed up to rehearse under Kim Young, who was directing the choir at the time, and enjoyed that very much. Now, I had taken organ lessons from Trevor Ray, the director, back when I was in high school. And I came to Kim after choir one night and I said, "Is there any possibility I could come in some Saturday and, just play the organ? I'd like to see if I can do that." And she said, "Well, I'll ask the music committee." Well, the word came back, yes, you could. And I came over from Stumpfield Road and came in and had a 3 or 10 or 18-hour session with myself on the organ, playing the same thing kind of over and over. A good time, and that was it. I closed the desk up and went home. And in December, Dudley Terrell, who had been the organist here at the time, said, "I'm done, I'm leaving." And Kim said to me, "Steve, could you play the organ for 2 or 3 Sundays for church?" Oh, I said, "Kim, I don't play in public." Oh, I can't imagine it. And I went home and told Sue, and we both had a laugh about it. But I had this other thought in my head. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh, do you think you can do it? Well, I'm going to give it a shot. And I did. And that's how I happened to be playing the organ here for many years, as it were. And it all had to do with my love of it. I loved the sound of the organ, and I couldn't get enough of it. I could play the same piece over and over and hear a phrase that I love and play it over and over and over. Kind of pathetic, you might say, but that's the way it was. So I played the organ here for 2 or 3 years, from 1969 through to about 71 or 72. And at that time, Dudley Terrell presented the church with a possibility of enlarging the organ. It wasn't in terribly good shape at the time. It had its problems, it had its trouble. But he set out to make the work to fix it up. And I'm going to have to read this. He reorganized the interior. He consolidated the mechanisms that control the sound that comes out of the organ. He put in a couple of, I'm doing what I said I wouldn't. He put in a new blower You must imagine that in order for the thing to work, the wind's gonna come from somewhere. And that's a blower. They put a new blower in, new wind chests, and the church raised about $10,380 to pay for this whole thing, which she did over, what, it would be 3 or 4 years. And everything was fine for a while. I played on and on and on, and then the flaws began to show up. Without going into all of those, let me say that by the year 2000, the church had decided that we needed to have some serious work done on it. And after interviewing and talking with 5 organ companies, we decided on the Andover Organ Company in Methuen, Massachusetts. And they would do the job. And the church was able to raise $52,000 to make that possible. It was a huge amount for the time, 1980, but we had some wonderful donors. All of us tried to help. And they finished their work. They took the organ apart, took all the pipes, put them in boxes, and took all of the works out of the organ and took them to Methuen. So I played a little reed organ during the time this organ was out, and that seemed to cover things all right. They brought it back in the fall of 2000. We had a guest organist from Massachusetts play a recital, and we were on our way. I played until I think 2016 or so here, and problems began to show up here and there, and I'm sure they have showed up more clearly since that. It isn't a, it's like a car. You can't go out and buy a new car and bring it home, put it in the garage and travel 8,000, 10,000 miles a year and have it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, but never take it to the shop. Just don't take it to the shop. Why? It seems to run okay until the day that it breaks down entirely. Organs are like that too. I wouldn't be able to estimate for you the number of moving parts inside this case. And I guess, will people have a chance to peek in there at some point? It's very difficult. Everything's, very tight. But you will see thousands of parts inside there to make it possible to make sounds. Let's see. I have a couple of pictures here. Oh, you've already had sent them around? Oh, well, do you want to send them around? Jen will send around 2 pictures that were taken before 1906, and it shows the organ located right in this space. The man who designed it, Mr. Simmons of Boston, put a jog in the back of the case because he thought it would be best upstairs in the balcony. He had designed many organs and put them in balconies. And if you look up there, you will see the case in which the weights for the clock drop down as it unwinds. When Dudley Terrell worked on the organ in the 1970s, got rid of that because it was taking up space and was able to use it as he was enlarging the organ. I can't tell you enough of how wonderful it was to play the organ and to have people say, "Oh, you're fine, you're doing a good job." I was never certain of that, but I was grateful for the opportunity to do it. And I haven't said half of what I was going to say, but you've heard enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful. Great beginning. It reminded me, when I first played, I had to get up early on New Year's Day. It happened to be a Sunday in 1957. No, it was 58 because it was the first day of 58. People had called my mom in a church that my dad had previously served in Massachusetts. And the organist wasn't going to be able to be there that day. I think he was ill. It was also snowing. And they needed an organist, and my mom volunteered me. I hadn't played organ yet. I had been playing piano, and yeah, I'd steal over to Parsonage at that time, was next to the church that my dad was currently serving. And I would steal over and play on the Hammond, not a pipe organ. And so she put me on the job in 1958. Right on that first Sunday, I was playing the organ, and I've been doing it ever since. Not as a job, I didn't get a real job until 1959 in a congregational church just about the size of this one in Bolton, Connecticut, on a Hammond.
Couldn't get away from it.
Well, I did. And 2 years later, I got a job in Kansas, and I was on a pipe organ. And I've been on a pipe organ ever since. So that's what, 1961, beginning then. And this instrument is a unique instrument in my career because I never had played on a tracker instrument or a mechanical action instrument. And this instrument is mechanical action. When I depress a key, it sets in motion a series of levers which lead to the pipe itself. And that means there's a lot of mechanical stuff going on that has to be taken care of. Not every note on this instrument plays immediately. Some of them play a little after the fact. So you get used to it, and you know that when you're going to have this combination of stops and you're going to have to play that particular note or notes, that you get them ready a little bit sooner than you would otherwise. Also, occasionally, and this was the case 2 weeks ago today, it was cold in here. The heat hadn't been turned up. We'd had a problem with the furnace. And I came in and I played this note, like that. And then I played a chord like this. And I let go of the chord, and that note kept playing. And the only way to get rid of the note was for me to throw every stop on that I could, all coupled together to that pitch, and just hit the pitch over and over again until it stopped. I thought I would be able to have that problem when I came in here yesterday to prepare for today. When I came in here yesterday, the heat was at 70 degrees. Do you think I could make that thing malfunction? Not a whit.
Hey, the organ said, "Who, me?"
Ooh, me, exactly. So, God, that's the kind of relationship we have with this instrument. Actually, I've had that relationship with a number of organs over the years. You get used to the mechanical malfunction. And even if it's an electro-pneumatic organ, you have still levers to work with, and you still have things that have to open and close in order for the air to get to the particular pipe. There are things that are out of tune right now. Luckily, Andover is coming at the end of this month after the heat is on and the room is fairly stable, ready for winter. They're going to come and tune the instrument. It's important to have that stability, and they'll come and they'll tune the instrument again in the spring after the heat goes off. Now you may wonder, you know, Bach, he didn't have that problem, did he? Well, of course he did. He had a church that was cold in the winter.
No furnace.
Yes, exactly. And he had fellows who would go up. And has anybody been to a European church, a large European church of any sort? Yes. The organs are often high up in the building, many times at the rear of the building. In fact, most times, I think, in Lutheran churches where I've used to, they're in the rear, in the balcony. And the pumpers of the organ would have to sit high on a scaffolding in order to pump, oftentimes pedaling with a pedal pump of some sort. And all kinds of things would happen to these fellows. Sometimes they'd bring a pint with them, and there would be a terrible disaster in the middle of the service when someone fell off their perch. They would play cards, you know, because large instruments needed more than one person pumping the air. So they'd have a little community up there. And it was kind of like, yeah, the guy sitting in, you know, behind, just we have here, but it was guys. So we don't have that. We have a blower, thank goodness. And I'm not having to supply the air, which is very nice. And the air gets regulated. That's part of the problem from time to time, is the regulation of the air. Is it getting to all the pipes? You see pipes here on the facade. Most of these don't work. Steve told me some of them work, and I haven't found the ones that work yet. But you can see the basic design. You have a pipe that's sitting in a hole in the organ chest. These are not in the chest itself, but the pipes, if you look carefully between the pipes and behind, you can see a variety of pipes, both metal and wooden. And you have to think about the wooden pipes, that they expand and contract with moisture. And the metal pipes expand and contract with heat and cool. So the possibilities of things being out of tune at any time are very high. Let me just play a few things and show you what presently is happening here. I can be heard. I'm going to project. That last little set of notes that I played, you know the melody, yes. Simple gifts. And that last phrase that I played, one of the notes did not play right away. Play it again. That time it worked. Depends on how firmly and squarely I hit the note. If I'm playing a fast passage, that note won't work. It just won't function. Let's see if I can get another. That was pretty good. This one is very sluggish. You know, it went out of condition. That's because I didn't put enough moxie on the note. So you learn what you have to do, what kind of extra punch you need to give to the note. Now, there are tuning problems too. This, that's not bad at all. Let me add this. Right away. Nice, huh? That's this note. And this one together. You can hear the wah, 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 wah that's going on there. Yeah. You have to be very careful what you choose to mix together. And when I'm playing a hymn, I put on a number of stops that have to work together. Let's try this. Here's the basic organ sound. This is the principle at what we call 8 foot. And really what that means is you've got a pipe that's 8 feet long, and it's being pressurized from the air when I depress the key, and it's producing the pitch that I have. For instance, here's middle C. Okay? When I hit that note, that middle C pipe is air is allowed then to go through the pipe. It hits the little slit in the pipe itself, and the air very quickly vibrates back and forth, making the air inside the pipe vibrate. And it should vibrate at the pitch that you want, the number of vibrations per minute that will produce that particular pitch. You know what A440, for instance, there's an A, and that pipe is vibrating 440 times per second inside. So, and every pipe has to do that. Now, what I'm going to show you is this. Not bad. The sound's a little warmer. Let's try this. Richer, little bit of intonation problem, but let's do this. I'm going to change the pitch here. Can you hear it? Yeah. Now, I can do that with what's called tremolo style. Can you hear the movement of the pitch? Just very light. It's much more subtle than the other vibration. But it's a similar kind of thing where the air pressure is not the same in the two pipes. I've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4 pipes that I'm using at the same time. So I have to be very careful when I'm playing not to use particular pipes right now, because they're going to produce a sound that's just out of tune. The reeds are another problem. That's how dry I am. That's a different song. That's not a temperate song. Couplets are in there. Right there. Turn that treble down. So you can see that there are all kinds of decisions that I have to make all the time, given the shortcomings on the instrument. Restoring this instrument won't take care of all of those problems because humidity and air temperature affect the instrument all the time. What I told the kids a couple of weeks ago is the secret of the effectiveness of this instrument as opposed to others. And that's the fact that this instrument breathes. It's artificial breathing. It's not the way a human breathes, but the supply for the sound is air, just like us. And just like us, when we're signified as having been born, it means we take that first breath and we go, ah! Well, maybe, ah! And this instrument gets that message. And it furthermore, by using the air wisely and hopefully better in a restoration, then it's great support for singing as a congregation. And people know that. So that's basically what I have to say. Any questions? Don't have time for questions.
If you have further curiosity about getting up close to the organ, we will have that chance in a couple of events from now. We'll get up at close and personal and play around with what's going on up there. So thank you, David and Stephen, for giving us some context around the history of this organ and your relationship with it. Maybe perhaps some issues with producing sound from it, but what is clear and what has come through time and again is that this congregation has a love for music. And I think it's pertinent now more than ever to remind us that it is often said that if you sing, it is as if you are praying twice. Has anyone heard that before? Yes. So, yes, thank you, Paul. Always the theologian. Well, our organ sings as well for us. Music has been a central expression of our faith here at First Church of Hopkinton, and it has worked to instill hope in our community since our very beginning. It is no surprise that music is deeply valued and a gift of this congregation. This afternoon, we have on loan from the Historical Society, thank you, Heather, a double bass that was made by Abraham Prescott, a well-known maker of stringed instruments who worked in Deerfield and Concord, New Hampshire during the 19th century. He's known especially for his double basses, which are prized by professional musicians and orchestras throughout the US. And what's special about this double bass in particular is that it was played right here in this very room from the 1820s to the 1850s, before we had a pipe organ. It helped our congregation remain on beat and on pitch, which I'm sure we needed help with. And as the description of the double bass says over in the Great Hall and priorly at the Historical Society, in his book, Life and Times in Hopkinton, New Hampshire, author C.C. Lord notes that Hopkinton's Congregational Church Choir in 1800 included 4 bass viols, to say nothing of violins, clarinets, and other instruments, in the 50-member congregational choir. So, needless to say, we love music here, and we love making a joyful noise in 2024, and it turns out that this is not a new love of this church. It has been in our very DNA. We also have on display a seraphine, an early keyed wind instrument, something of a cross between a reed organ and an accordion, which was purchased in 1850 after the double bass was leased out to someone else in New Hampshire, before we were able to purchase a pipe organ. This instrument, I've been told, has been played by Missy Dustin as well as Steve Thomas to guide the congregation's singing of Christmas carols in the narthex, once upon a time, the seraphim. And today and in the weeks to come, I hope we all invite each other to give thanks for all the ways music connects us to the Spirit and to our ancestors who built the foundation upon which we stand today. And so with that, let us prepare our hearts and our minds to listen to some beautiful music offered by Missy and Dan, and also prepare ourselves to look at these instruments in the flesh over in the Great Hall for a reception. Thank you.
We are not going to play buttercups and music. It's just too sweet. Instead, we're going to play Wild Rose. One of the men who played this organ on there, our friend Alan Woodward, whose claim to fame was that he had once been accomplished the greatest pianist in the world, a man named George Barrera. And after a very bad performance, Barrera put this music on Alan Woodward's dresser and said, "You keep this, I never want to see it again." And so that's the connection. So we begin with Wild Rose by Abel Kirshak, who was born in Transylvania. No. Sharp? Oh, it's a pages. Things are getting worse and worse. The difference between the flute and the organ, when the organ's out of tune, it's not his fault. John Rutter is my age, a year older, which made a difference in high school, I suppose. And what's wonderful about this music, remember, every single note makes sense. But when you hear this, every note will be saying, oh yeah, that comes from. It's the prelude here, it was a prelude in this church before. And we build it in the bulletin as Blind Gallery. And it seems to me, it continues to seem to me, that it is early morning on the Sea of Galilee, on one of those days when something special is going to happen. It might be the day when Jesus says, cast them in on the other side and then fills up with fish. It might have been the day where the big storm comes up and Jesus is asleep in the stern of the boat and wakes him up and he says, why are you calling me? Take care of us. It's useful. And that's how I see this, and that's how we played it then, and I've never played it any differently.
Thank you so much, Dustins. Before I wrap up, Steve Thomas has requested the mic for one last.
I don't think I need the mic. I just wanted to say this. This is exactly 152 years to the day that the minister preached the dedication sermon for the organ. Something's going on.
Thank you, Steve. Always the historian for us. So grateful to you. And so grateful to everyone who has worked so hard to make these series happen, not only for the benefit of this beautiful instrument, but also for the benefit of taking time to pause and reflect on music's role in our lives, because isn't it sustaining in so many ways? After this program has concluded, you are welcome to make your way over to the parish house, because we have a recording of that double bass being played over there. We made the recording last week. A double bass player came over and played pizzicato on it for us. So if you're curious about what those folks in First Church were hearing over 200 years ago, I suppose, that's over there, as well as some baked goods and some more history of our town, as well as the actual double bass on display, as well as the reed organ that we've used for so long. So if you're curious about all of that, that's what's happening over there, as well as an art project. And you'll notice that there are these glitzy fake pipes, both at the back of the narthex and also over in the Great Hall. Those are for contributions to the campaign as well as for the baked goods. So they'll be out over the next several months in case you would like to make a donation. Thank you all and have a lovely evening.